Hey, good evening, folks. We're going to call to order the regular bi-monthly meeting of the Marin Water Board of Directors for the Marin Municipal Water District for Tuesday, December 19th, 6:30 p.m. Terry, could we get a roll call?
Yes, good evening. Vice President Ranjiv Kush,
Here.
Director Larry Russell,
Here.
Director Matt Sampson,
Here.
Director Jed Smith,
Here.
and President Monty Schmidt.
Here. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Are there any comments on the agenda?
There are none.
Okay. Can I get a roll call vote for the agenda?
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Yes.
and President Schmidt.
Aye. Okay, I'm announcing that we're going to have a closed session at the end of our regular meeting here. So,
No.
No, I'm sorry. They're
not?
actually not a closed session
None.
this
Okay.
evening. But
well, it's going to be even shorter evening. Thank goodness. I know. Whew. Okay, our new agenda here. Okay, with that, then, are there any public comments on items not on the agenda?
There are none. Oh, there is. Now there is. Okay. Okay.
Just one. Good evening. A couple of things. In the last Marin Water News, I enjoyed a very well-written column about a customer who installed a flume device and found a toilet leak and an outdoor sprinkler leak, fixed them both and got a 40% reduction on our next water bill. It was a clear and motivating first-person story that once again reminded me that we have a center of excellence here in our communications group. And it makes me look forward to the day when we'll turn our full attention to conserving the use of valuable potable water outdoors. When we have a few stories under our belts, I'm optimistic that we can communicate them well and accelerate our conservation goals. Second, I attended a Zoom call last week on the toilet to tap issue, on which 50 members of the National Sierra Club came together to share stories of their experiences across the country. Going in, I was pretty sure that wastewater was a primary source of PFAS or forever chemicals, something that we here in Marin are very fortunate not to have in our water supply. My question going in was whether or not treated wastewater might be a supply source for outdoor irrigation. After listening to the group response, I came away with the understanding that even outdoors, these chemicals can affect pets and wildlife, and when close to waterways, can accumulate in endangered fish species. Even though there's currently a political push to incorporate treated wastewater into our potable water supply, the fact remains that there are thousands of these chemicals contained in wastewater, not all of which have been identified. The other thing I learned was that the treatment cycle for wastewater is about a day and a half. So if we did discover a problem with something unexpected showing up in the water supply, there would be very little time to respond and head off a potential health issue. It made me glad that we're using great caution in considering this potential water source. The consensus was that plain old conservation continues to be the gold standard, although I haven't yet discarded the possibility that other outside water sources might be used for those clustered, non-potable water customers who wish to continue using large amounts of outdoor water.
There are no further speakers.
Okay, thank you. All right, can I get a motion to adopt our consent items?
So moved. Second.
Are there any public comments?
There are none.
Okay, can we get a roll call vote?
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Kush,
Aye.
and President Schmidt.
Aye.
And are we going to
Yes,
do the
sorry.
director's announcement?
Yes, I'm just jumping through the agenda so quick and I'm just overlooking some important. So do we have any director's comments? We'll start with Matt, maybe on the end here.
Yep, sounds good, Monty. Last Tuesday, the 12th, we had a watershed committee meeting and we received an update on a few items. A pretty encouraging report from the Point Blue folks on their Northern Spotted Owl surveys. It was good to hear those results, as well as the partnership that continues to provide value to the district with Point Blue. I've got an update as well in the Lagunitas Creek Rehabilitation Project and the grant funding that's going into that, really bringing it back to life. And it's really fun to watch that program develop. We just approved the CCC contract to the California Conservation Corps to help continue work on the watershed, which is another fantastic partnership, leveraging other programs to be able to expedite and amplify the work we're doing in the watershed, which is vitally needed. So good to see that happen. And then finally, the big item on the calendar was the recreation management plan. We got a quick overview on that and understanding that a lot of folks were looking for a full rollout on that plan that afternoon. We did get an overview of 4 good components, which I think will be valuable when we're building this plan out, and that's stewardship, visitor outreach with facilities, policies, and plans, and then finally adaptive management and some zoning parts. So looking forward to some good progress on that. And then the draft rollout, just as a reminder for the public, is going to be February 29th at 6:30, which is a change to a special watershed committee meeting just for that evening. Other than that, just, following up on the recycled water comments, I'm sure most folks caught on today that the California Water Resources Control Board made a really big approval as we move towards the use for potable recycled water in the state, and look forward to continuing to stay on top of that and see how it could potentially be brought into our system. That's it.
Ranjit?
Thanks, Monty. I just wanted to mention that last Monday, the 11th, Brett Uppendahl, our finance director, and I met with the Ross Property Owners Association. It was just a very basic discussion on various questions, topics that they were interested in related to Marin water and our supply. I think what's maybe more for me, what was more important from that was I think that type of engagement between staff and community members in different settings can be very productive. I know it's a big imposition. These often happen in the evenings. It's a big imposition on staff time, but I hope it's something that we can consider more thoughtfully as part of our overall outreach and engagement activities. Thank you.
Larry, do you have any comments?
Only that I'm feeling pretty good. I finished the Paxlovid. I'm still testing positive though, but other than that, I'm feeling fine.
Okay, good news. And Jed?
Yeah, two comments. One, I guess this is maybe one item not on the agenda, but Molly, you had asked us for our input for policy changes or thoughts, and rather than just send it directly to you, I figured I'd just throw it out there. Over the course of the last year, some of these items have come up. Namely the board policy on dual noticing and committee meetings, which we were going to discuss in January, board compensation policies, looking at the policy around general manager and general counsel review processes. We discussed it. I don't know if we ever formalized that. The committee chair ability to either review or discuss agendas with the staff and the general manager ahead of the committee meetings. And then the timing of assignment, we also discussed about of committee assignments and director positions in the beginning of the year, especially when you have a lot of new members on the board. So I think those are all the ones that I put up, and I don't know if anyone wants a second to have those or others that they may want to forward to Molly. We can think about it. The second point is I thought that, it was a good time to reflect on the fact that at least I've been here for now a year, and being this anniversary to be on this esteemed board, it has been humbling. It's been interesting. It's been challenging. But, when we look at a world of and an environment in our national and international discourse that is so fraught, we're super fortunate, I believe, here, at least from my perspective, at Marin Water, to be in a healthy, strong position. And although people have a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts, we are in solid shape. But I knew this would be a challenge coming in, but I was quite humbled by the complex issues that we were faced and confronted with, and tossed into a maelstrom of a very difficult set of decisions, and with an agency that had tremendous needs. And for me, the speedy start was mellowed by a deepening and strengthening relationship with Ben, our general manager, with our thoughtful work of our leadership team, our union stewards, our staff in general, and our fellow board members, whose thoughtful discourse and deep commitment has elevated our ability to serve us all well. And to Ranjiv and to Matt, who partnered with me on the campaign trail and listened and learned, and we found our way through our first election. You are exceptional directors. I'm proud to serve by your side. and Monty, who I am super grateful of your leadership as president during this year where we had a lot of action. Your steady hand was critical through this, what I saw as astonishing progress. Larry Russell, who had to withstand the loss of some extraordinary talent on this board, who he had worked with for many, many years. I want to thank you for your guidance, your friendship, and decades of dedication to our mission. You know, when we joined Marin a year ago, we had a combined board here in this agency of 74 years of experience, and we have less than a third of that now. But I also think it's important that we did come in with some verve. You know, we did come in like, you know, we're gonna make some change here. But now as I look back, I think it's really important that we don't point fingers at the past, that we don't look at what may have gone right or may have gone wrong, that we are fortunate to be in these seats in this room, to be serving based on the remarkable hard work and stewardship of decades and decades and generations of dedicated people. People like Jack Gibson, Joe Nation, Cynthia Kohler, Armando Quintera, Jared Huffman, Larry Bragman, and many more. It's because of their work that we're able to be here and be a part of this strong and thoughtful agency. And now it's time for us not to look back, but we are the ones that are responsible. It's our actions that matter. And it is our time to deliver. It is on us. And speaking of actions, in the last year, we've accomplished a lot. I am quite proud of it. We've approved the first water resiliency reliability roadmap in decades. We approved the a full-blown 4-year union contract, the first one that had been agreed to since 2011, besides a couple of extensions, which I understand there was negotiation around. We turned the corner on a perilous financial situation where we were left with $1 million shortfall in revenues per month, and we had dozens of staff that we could not hire because of our budgetary constraints. We're in the final stages of putting together the first strategic plan in many, many years, and a watershed recreation plan that we hope will get approved in the coming months for the first time since 2004. This board has proven that we listen, that we're here to take action, that we care, and we're here to serve. And I look forward to serving with you in the years ahead as we shore up our water supply, extend our regional relationships, care for our sensitive watershed and the habitats within, recognize the value of our citizens' experience on our lands and ourselves up for the strong financial and set ourselves up for the strong financial position in the decades to come. I promise that I will give it my all, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve with you and for you and our wonderful neighbors in this spectacular corner of the world that we call Marin.
Oh, thank you, Jed.
Well said. Wow. Well, I've got nothing more to say about that. I guess, you know, I guess I would say, you know, as we are looking at our last meeting here, for the year, it has been quite a year. And while I'm only have been on the board now for 3 years, at this point, the last year has just been remarkable, and the way in which all the board members and all the staff have had to really, I think, step into the opportunities that we had to really do a lot of really important work that put the district on much stronger footing, supported our all of our staff, and made sure that we were had a district that was financially set to be able to take on the challenges we've got going forward, and to be planning ahead with our water supply resiliency work that is so important to ensure we manage the next drought. So, I mean, and that's just, I think, a small, actually, those are important tasks that we accomplish, but there's so much more that goes on every single day that delivers water to our houses and to our businesses that we don't even know occurs because it gets done without us noticing. So big shout out to all of our staff who make that happen. Ben, any comments?
I do have a couple, President Schmidt. The first one is, if you haven't noticed, it's raining. And it's a nice series of storms. We got 400 to 500 acre feet already, but we'll get quite a bit more over the next couple of days. And then next week, there's another pattern developing. So hopefully The pattern we expect with El Nino is starting to take hold and bring some of the storms south. And we'll certainly benefit from that in terms of water supply, but also the fisheries and the overall ecosystem. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll report out on how this series of storms did for us. The also wanted to share that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, through their Fisheries Restoration Grant Program, announced a selection of 26 projects that will receive a collective 14 million to protect, restore, enhance freshwater habitats of salmon and steelhead in Northern California. And we're excited to announce that 600,000 of that was awarded to Marin Water to advance the design work, permitting, environmental compliance with phase 2 of the Habitat Enhancement Plan, Lagunitas Creek. So we'll be able to advance to 30%, 5 restoration sites in phase 2 within Samuel P. Taylor Park. And the design's going to happen concurrently with the implementation of the phase 1 sites that we've talked about previously. So it's exciting. The grants keep coming in, which means importantly, that there's recognition of the quality work we're doing, that we deliver. And really, I think just a respect for this organization and staff that have really paved the way with a lot of this great restoration work. So that's very exciting. And then lastly, I just got inspired. Expired. Did I say expired? And I just wanted to share briefly that I'm appreciative as well. I mean, this role, helping to lead this institution, it's a responsibility, but it's a privilege as well. And we have such great staff, I think, as the board knows, and this board. It's just really, to me, been impressive watching 3 new board members in no time get up to speed and tackle the decisions that were in front of you. And I just feel we're in a great place with staff and the board to address the challenges in front of us. And we all know, quite a lot of them. So I'm really looking forward to this coming year. That's it.
I want to give a chance to my fellow board members who might, and Larry too, if you've got anything you'd like to add on this, even where we seem to be taking stock of our accomplishments over the last year. It's some important stuff.
Well, I do have a few comments. I think it's been an exciting path. Glad to have you guys on board. Ben, I think it's time for Paul Sellier to add his weather forecasting back to his report. He was pretty good at that during the drier periods of time. We might as well continue it now when it looks like it might be a little easier.
I'd just like to add one thing and not continue the reminiscing about the last 365 days, but to follow up on Director Smith's comments about reviewing the policies as we move into January. I know we've talked about it quite a bit, and I'd like to see us take action on it and put that one behind us. So
it's really hard for me to add anything to what Jed and others have noted. I agree, wholeheartedly with all the sentiments, but maybe, the one thing is also just to acknowledge committed members of the public that work with us through so many of these issues and that are so dedicated to ensuring our water supply and our environment here in Marin. So thanks to all the members of the public that engage with us.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to our first agenda item, which is an updated 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan.
It's a public hearing, Monty.
And it's a public hearing. Yeah.
You got to open it.
Opening the public hearing.
Yeah, with the mallet.
We can follow the presentation with opening the public hearing for when we're ready to take comment, if that
Okay.
works.
My apologies.
No worries.
Okay, good evening. I'm Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. Just going to share my screen. Try to get the right presentation so we don't give away all the excitement for the presentation to follow. Okay, great. So, the public hearing will open, I guess, subsequent to this, but as noted on here, this will be a public hearing. And we're here to discuss, and I'm going to present, this is an update to the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And in the presentation this evening, just have a sort of a quick review as to what urban water management plans are and maybe what they aren't as well, because they can often get confusing. And this is just noting, there are very few sections of this plan that were updated. It was a very targeted update. And
Sorry, we're on
Sorry, we have
8A
a
now.
pause.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to, just out of an abundance of caution, step out of this meeting at this time. Although I don't think there's any true financial conflict of interest. I am on the list to join the Meadow Club, and given the fact that there is, potential impact on that organization, I'm not a member, but I'm just going to step out and let you guys go forward, and I'll step back in when you're done.
Can I take advantage of that to also ask Molly for clarification on what a public hearing means? How does that differentiate from our regular board discussion?
It's really not as different as you would think. Primarily, the difference is the type of notice that's provided. We do publish notice. So there was notice published in the Marin Independent Journal to let people know of this. It is a statutory requirement with respect to the Urban Water Management Plan adoptions and updates. So that's why we are holding it. And then we do formally open the public hearing for public to participate. In effect, there's little noticeable difference, but it's just more of a formal process. We do close the public hearing at the end of public comment, and then it happens to proceed very much like a regular item. Those are statutory, primarily where the law requires an item to be considered in a public hearing setting. So you'll recall, that our rate setting process in May was also a public hearing. We did provide special notice to the public on that, and then held a public hearing, opened the public hearing, closed the public hearing. So it's a bit more of a formal process, but it's typically where law requires it to be noticed as a public hearing.
Thank you for asking that question. I learn something every time I come here, which is great. Okay. And with that, Paul.
Okay, continuing on. So it's a very targeted update. And so it's a fairly short presentation to the point this evening. So what is an urban water management plan? These are plans that are mandated by the water code, and urban water suppliers that serve more than 3,000 customers prepare these plans every 5 years. So our last full update was in 2020. The next full update will be due by June of 2026. They always give sort of a 6-month grace period. And it's a fairly prescriptive document. In other words, the water code has, there are prescriptions for what you put in tables, and it allows the state, if you think about the state is collecting this information over a vast number of water agencies that are just all different sizes and kinds. And it allows them to sort of standardize the data collection process. And of course, standardization is great in some instances and doesn't work so well in others. And so maybe, just for a pause there, urban water management plans for agencies like us, they are a planning tool, and it's sort of a high level planning tool, but not the same level of water supply planning that might go into something like the strategic water supply assessment. Remember, these are every 5-year plans that are designed really to make sure that water agencies are looking at their water supply and comparing it to their current and future demands. So as noted on this slide, it is essentially that. It's to ensure that we can meet projected water supply demand. The water shortage contingency plan, if you recall the different stage levels that we talked about earlier this year, that's also part of the urban water management plan. And we have a lesson learned that we wanted to change in that plan. And that's why that's included tonight. It's part of the urban water management plan process. So our background then as to why are we doing this plan kind of mid-cycle? It just so happened that 6 months after we published our plan in 2021, the Bay Area governments published their final regional housing needs assessment numbers for Marin. And they updated, I think that was in December of 21, and in March of 22, they kind of updated them again. And so we wanted to make sure that our urban water management plan had the right population projections and water demand numbers in it. And so that's the reason for our update today. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the water shortage contingency plan is part of the urban water management plan, and we have a small change that we'd like to recommend there. So again, a very light update. Rather than going through all of the details in the packet this evening was the full sort of public draft of the document. And these are the sections in that document which largely relate to, again, future population and the projected water demand, and then how that factors into our supply, which of course the supply tables remain unchanged from 2020. And then a change to the water shortage contingency plan. So just looking briefly then at this is the main difference for us is population. And this was, if you look at the top row, that was what was originally included in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And that reflects our, relatively low levels of growth in the county. And the bottom row is how those numbers changed with the regional housing needs assessment. And if you on the bottom row, that's about a 20% increase compared to the top row. So, and this is through 2045. So, the top row is about, I think, a 9 or 10% increase somewhere in that region. So it looks like it's substantial, but when we looked at the water supply to meet these demands, this population, we broke it out into, the regional housing needs assessment says you need to have some certain number of dwelling units added to the service area. And so how do you break those down into what types of units, right? Are they single family? Are they multifamily? So what we did, and it's a fairly conservative estimate, what we did was we used the existing pattern of the district in terms of single family and multifamily, and just said, okay, those new units, they're going to follow that same pattern that we currently have. And so that, of course, for our service area, we have vastly more single family connections than we do multifamily connections. And so as you can see here in this slide, we're showing 4,266 additional single family connections and 1,145 multifamily connections. So those are the changes in terms of dwelling units. Now, I should say each multifamily connection, a multifamily unit, we took as an average of 5 units. So to get dwelling units, you'd multiply that 1,145 by 5. And that's the change. These numbers are the change in dwelling units from 2020. Those changes result in 2,401 acre feet of additional water use in 2045, from additional to what was reported in the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. It's about an 8% increase in total demand.
And Paul, just to reinforce, if you go back, Paul mentioned is a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
And to explain, it's reasonable to assume, but at this point, it's kind of just an assumption, which is why we're using this breakdown of multi-residential and single, that probably those flip, that most of the development is likely to be multi-residential and they use less water on a per capita basis. So that's his point, that this is a conservative estimate.
Yeah, if it exactly flipped, it would be about a 50% reduction in demand that we're then
So go from 8 to 4.
Yeah. Okay, so again, following the prescription for the Urban Water Management Plan, we're sort of required to look at this supply and demand assessment over a normal year, a single dry year, and a multi-dry year. And of course, we know this year might be considered normal, so we're going to have a decent amount of rainfall and water supply. So we're not really challenged in normal year conditions. And in single dry year conditions, following the formula that the urban water management plan has, we don't have any supply deficits in a single dry year. And similarly, in the multiple dry year, which we used to meet the requirements of the plan, a historical 5-year drought for us, which was the 87 to 92 drought. Again, we don't have any supply deficits. That's not to say that our water supplies aren't challenged, and the urban water management plan itself does have a drought risk assessment where we created a synthetic drought, and similar to the strategic water supply assessment, you see our reservoir levels dipping down low. So in that sense, the urban water management plan is consistent with what we have in SWUSA, or the strategic water supply assessment. And I would say, just for the record, that in the strategic water supply assessment, we included the regional housing needs numbers. So with this update to the urban water management plan, both of those plans will now be consistent in terms of their demand. So now,
Sorry, Paul, could we do questions just before you switch gears here? So I was trying to follow your estimate of the different types of housing that will be developed, single unit versus multi-unit. And based on one formulation of, of the ratios, you come up with about an 8% increase in demand. If I think you said if there are more multi-unit, if there's more multi-unit housing, the demand could actually drop down to about 4% over 2020.
yes.
So we have this lower range of 4%, 8% increase that you showed. Do you also have an upper estimate for, if we might see something unexpected with respect to the ratio of single family to multi-unit?
So in our service area, it's 90+% single family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really relatively few multifamily that we would expect to see. And that's why when you flip it, you get such a dramatic reduction in demand.
Okay, so that 8% increases
Upper bound.
upper bound.
Yeah, we feel pretty confident in that.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And then the last, the one other question I have is for the strategic water supply assessment. When you plugged the RHNA numbers in, you were using the 8% increase?
Yes, the same.
Paul, following up on those estimates, looking at the RENA numbers that are put out, does that, and it's going to be a little bit hard to forecast, so I understand, but looking at things like builder's remedy and density bonuses and things like that, they're going to come into play as these plans get approved. Is that incorporated at all within here, or do you think it's even going to affect the percentage increase in water use?
We felt that that we didn't have the information available to us to really make that accuracy. So we took kind of this conservative approach in terms of water volume, and I think that covers us. In terms of, many of the cities and towns may be submitting more sites than they're required to for their housing elements, for example, but just on the understanding that many of those sites may not qualify to be built, may not be buildable for one reason or another. So that's why they, typically might submit 10% more. So we've based it on the RENA numbers as opposed to sort of the housing element numbers, which really are not entirely available. It's not all of the housing elements are quite settled just yet. So.
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then I think it's always a good opportunity to highlight the fact of how much less water is being used in a modern home, especially in the northern part of the distribution area with recycled water. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I know I think you've picked a conservative upper bound by doing the calculation this way. I just wonder if we could show, we could just look at development in the last 10 years and look at that ratio and say, like, I mean, because the current build out today is built upon a pattern of development and space that we no longer have. And so I wonder whether looking at the last 10 years of development, whether there's a ratio there that might speak more to like the kind of conditions and types of build outs that we'll likely see into the future. just, and I, not that I would change what we should include, because I'd rather us be conservative and find that we've got better supply out of
Yeah.
than we expected, but it would be, I think, helpful to just see that more as maybe as a range.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, I think we also just need to explain how we've already planned for this kind of growth in our future demand needs, so that we can actually see that, that we've already been planning ahead for this, for some level of growth. So we are fine in terms of our planning for the future, to make sure that we have a climate safe and drought resilient and population growth plan.
So that brings up a good point, opportunity for some clarification. Here we added the RENA numbers, and the analysis found no supply deficits. And some may look at that and say, that's different than your strategic water supply assessment that did identify a deficit. And the distinction is attributed to, this is a formulaic process. So what we're really saying, in context of how the state is requiring us to go through the assumptions and look at the 3 successive years, the worst 3 years, and look at it in a certain time frame. In that context, there's no supply deficits. And as Paul mentioned, they do that so they can look at apples to apples and that sort of stuff. But us and many, many agencies do our own water supply assessment that's different and arguably more rigorous, and looking at the future that may come up with a different answer than this. And in our case, in many cases, it's similar, that they find no supply deficits here, but they're all in on water supply planning given climate change and future uncertainty.
Please.
Maybe Ben, just to follow up on that. But we can also confirm that in our water supply planning, as we plan for severe droughts beyond actually what we've experienced to date, we are taking into account
Correct.
the additional demand that is placed by the state mandated housing requirements. In the absence of those severe droughts, the marginal impact of the additional state mandated housing is within our ability to supply water. It does not place a serious constraint on our water supply.
Right. Particularly due to what's in front of us in the efforts and the direction the board has given staff to enhance our supplemental supply. Absolutely. And, also just reinforcing that the population numbers you look out may be 20%, but we're really talking in probably the 4 to 5% increase in demand due to a number of factors, including multi-residential, where they don't have landscaping, as well as current design standards. So what we wouldn't, and we hope folks don't think about kind of a linear extrapolation of 20%, you need 20% more water. That's really far from the case. And I know you understand that. I'm just reinforcing it for the public.
Okay. Good comment. So then that's the updates to the urban water management plan, the supply and demand assessment. In terms of the water shortage contingency plan, as I mentioned, this was updated just this past February, sort of lessons learned from the drought. And water shortage contingency plans are really, like all plans for emergencies, which droughts tend to be, they're developed so that we don't have to invent and think of actions and responses that we need to make in sort of the heat of the moment. So these plans outline the actions the district can take, both in water conservation measures, but also in operational, for example, purchasing additional water from Sonoma. So there's a wide range of actions the district can take in these plans. The one particular update that we'd like to make, and we feel that the current language in the water shortage contingency plan relates to the stage 3 restrictions on golf courses. And in particular, the current language really disincentivizes golf courses from sort of ongoing water efficiency measures. And maybe even encourages increases in water use. And the reason for that is the current language uses as a basis the average 3-year water use for golf courses. And when we go into a drought, that's the basis from which we would reduce their water use. So if we were in stage 3, we would be seeking up to 30% reduction in water use from sort of this already efficient average year use. And that's a hardship that golf courses experienced in the past drought. And the sort of second bullet here talks about this MAWA, which is the sort of maximum applied water allowance. And that's a number that factors into the irrigation area, the type of plant, and the weather pattern in the area. And it's an assessment done by district staff. If golf courses chose to increase, if we didn't change the language in the water shortage contingency plan, golf courses might decide to simply protect themselves and increase their average year water use so that when we did hit a stage 3 requirement, they would have room to accommodate that and still remain viable. So this could have a cumulative impact on water demand of up to 4,370 acre feet by through 2045. So that's adding up that 230 acre feet every year. We're proposing, and this is, I just want to draw your attention to this, it's slightly different than in the packet than what we're proposing tonight. And that is, we'd really like to change the language to reflect that golf courses can use either the average of the last 3 normal years usage, or to deficit irrigate by 30% to the site's maximum applied water allowance, whichever is more. And that whichever is more language was missing from the staff report, but it's a key element of and part of our intention this evening. So this proposal really provides the opportunity for golf courses to continue to invest in water efficiency measures in normal years. And over the long haul, over that sort of 20-25 year period, because stage 3 occurrences are relatively rare, even in our baseline conditions with no additional water supply, we wouldn't really expect stage 3 to occur, but every 6 years or so. So 4 times in the course of 25 years, we might hit stage 3, whereas you've got 21 years of sort of normal conditions where golf courses can be saving that water as opposed to maybe irrigating to their MAWA, if that makes sense. So I think this change will allow the district to save more water over the long haul, and that's to the benefit of all of our customers. And we feel that this change also kind of makes the water shortage contingency plan align a little better with our overall goals in water efficiency, which is, after all, saving as much water as we can. I'm going to do the recommendation and then the public hearing, Molly? Or?
Yes, I think we can do the recommendation, but then I would say that we would want to open the public hearing before there was a motion.
Okay, so then our recommendation then is to approve the resolution adopting the updated 2021 water management plan and the water shortage contingency.
Okay. So with this, Molly, now we open the public hearing.
Unless there are any clarification questions from the directors, we could open the public hearing.
Okay, so we'll start.
I do have some
Yeah,
questions.
go ahead.
Please start.
Yeah. Well, first, Paul, I really want to thank you. As you've noted, for the last year, we've been trying very hard to lead with conservation and water efficiency as we think about strengthening the resilience, improving the resilience of our water supply. So identifying this issue in the water shortage contingency plan that we approved last February, which actually, as you said, creates a perverse incentive for some of our customers, golf courses, of course, to reduce their conservation efforts and investments in water efficiency so that they are not penalized when we impose our shortage level measures. I hadn't seen that when we approved the water shortage contingency plan. So I really appreciate that you and staff have found this and are bringing it to our attention. On your recommendation for the changes, I think there's maybe two clarifications with shortage level 3 that I wanted to get your feedback on. Initially, I got stuck on the either. It wasn't clear to me who was making that decision, right? Is it us? Is it the customer? Now, but now so the decision being whether golf courses will be basing their their irrigation, if we are in shortage level 3, on the average use of their last 3 normal years versus the 30% reduction from their maximum applied water allowance. It wasn't clear to me how that decision is made, and I was concerned by the lack of clarity there. Now I see this addition you've made, which is whichever is more, but I'm still not entirely sure what more means. And I'm a little, it may be obvious to you, but I'm a little concerned that it might be hard for some to interpret that. So, and then maybe the hang up I have is what is a normal year? How are we going to define normal years? And I'm given that and the potential ambiguity around the normal year issue, how the decision is made between the two options for reducing irrigation. Honestly, I would like to see a simpler metric applied to this, where we just ask golf courses to reduce by 30% of their maximum allowed water allowance. And I'm not really clear on why we can't just do that. The argument for not just making it more simple. To me, it achieves the same thing. It's a lot clearer for all of us. But love to have your feedback on that.
I think that would be an okay change. I think our intention is to.
I think there could be a scenario there, Paul, where if we had a golf course that was not being efficient in their ongoing usage, that 30% reduction from the last 3 years would be higher than 30% of their maximum allowable. And if they aren't being efficient in their usage, well, actually,
that's where the whichever is
right,
more.
That's where that argues for
I do think it's a reasonable change. It aligns with sort of our intention, which is not to penalize them, but it prevents a scenario where they could be over irrigating.
Yeah, Paul, I really, and I'm not even going to want to ask you how we calculate the maximum applied water allowance.
I'm glad you're not asking.
I don't know if that changes with climatic conditions, and I'm guessing evapotranspiration feeds into this.
Exactly. I mean, as I said earlier, it's based on the irrigable area, the plant type, and sort of weather conditions or climate conditions for the zone.
Right. So yeah, again, I mean, just given, even, we might struggle to clarify what the changes we're making here. I will argue that we should consider a very simple directive or plan.
Would it help to pull it up again?
Basically what I'm suggesting, I think addresses what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And continue to incentivize, lower water usage.
Yeah. Oh, I've got to share it up.
And I guess just in trying to really see where this language, I think we're all clear about the positive thing that we want to do, which is encourage and financially encourage golf courses to invest in conservation. So I think let's make language that does that.
Yeah.
So parallel to this, just to throw all the things that are in this that are kind of confusing about this language, in addition to what Ranjiv mentioned, is I don't understand why we say whichever is more. Why not whichever is less? If either one would work as an outcome, if either one is viable from a conservation and a golf course management standpoint, why would if you take a look at that average, as Ben was mentioning, if you have a very inefficient golf course over the last 3 average years, you could game it to say like, oh, wow, my average years, I'm going to be wasteful, because then when I'm actually up against needing to be, to achieve this 30% reduction, it's better to have a high average.
Right.
So
No, that's what I said.
that's why I'm not sure why we wouldn't pick whichever is less if we think that that either of these should have a positive outcome. But
The whichever is less is problematic because currently our golf courses are efficient
Mhm.
and they're at about 70% of their MAWA, and the golf courses will really struggle to be viable if we reduce additional 30% from that. So that's why the whichever is more. But I think Director Krish's point is in stage 3, we could just say 70% of MAWA, and that would satisfy the golf courses, and they would be able to continue to have ongoing efficiencies. And then the other question regarding normal year, which is a great question, and we kind of, it's a euphemism for non-drought year essentially, but maybe we should be more clear about that and include that way. Yeah. What I on the fly here, what if we were to say golf course irrigation with potable or raw water shall be irrigated to 70% of the maximum applied,
No greater than.
no greater than 70%. Would that would cover it, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think that's equivalent to reduced by 30% of
Right.
MAWA. So no greater than 70% of MAWA. Paul, before you just relax, I'm also concerned about storage level 4, because honestly, this one to me is even more confusing. So I don't know if you have, otherwise I did pull it.
I haven't, so we're not changing storage level.
I know,
4,
but
yeah,
it's hard for me to follow because it currently reads golf course irrigation with potable or raw water shall be reduced by 40% compared to the average use of the last 3 normal years. So that's consistent with storage level 3. Then it says, or shall be irrigated to 90% of the site's maximum applied water allowance. So
that does
to
seem
me,
to
that
be
looks like a
inconsistent.
typo.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
I mean, I think there, I know then Molly, you're starting to, get a little nervous there. I think,
No, it's just trying to figure out, is there enough questions where it makes
Bring it
sense
back.
to take a look and bring this back with a clean recommendation? I think we could probably bring it on consent after this discussion. And really have a very tight, specific recommendation. Maybe not consent because it has to be a public hearing, but.
But I also think it's worth a listen to the public comment tonight as part of the public
Yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
for that to hear as well, because I think we have the opportunity to clean some stuff up. And Paul, I would hate to see you put in a spot where we're trying to come up with a solution here on the fly
Mhm.
that we
Yeah,
have to vote on. So,
I think
Um,
we're good on.
but I very much appreciate the work to get to this point right here. So.
Okay. Larry, do you-
Yes, I have several comments. I think Ben is correct. I think these changes are significant and need to be clearly thought through. When we're going to a public hearing, we need to be saying what we mean and meaning what we say. So I think it's a good idea to take a second shot at this. I think it is an excellent idea to get the public comment because they're here. let's go ahead and get that information. I like the change you made, Paul. I think that the more is an interesting approach. I had reservations about the less, but I don't share those reservations when the word is more. So I think that one, I think either approach is viable of using the MAWA or using the whichever is more, because I don't see that that hurts anything. So with that, I'm looking forward to the public's input.
Okay. Any other board comments? Okay, with that, we will formally open our public hearing and we will take public comment.
Yes, we have 3 speakers, and I'd like to remind them that we have 3 minutes. The first the speaker is Larry Minikis, then Dan Murray, and then Ed Jemison.
It was really comforting to.
Now,
No.
One more time.
there you go.
Okay. It's comforting to hear that the board was wrestling with this, because the board wasn't alone with wrestling with this. It's difficult. A couple things, it's good to see that it's been revised in response to this plan is being revised in response to the regional housing needs assessment. And that this is the first time we've seen that the projections for that are 8%. And that should calm a lot of fear about new housing coming in here. When we're talking 8%, it seems like a doable number for people at 2,400 acre feet roughly. And it is important to align the water shortage contingency plan with the district's water efficiency goals, especially with updated strategies on golf course irrigation under stage 3 restrictions. So it's good that you're having this discussion. And it's important to point out that the assessment is showing no supply deficit. But then we heard the conversation here that actually there's 2 ways of looking at this. So if I may suggest, if this is coming back, to have a slide that is comparing, saying, this is what we have to do under what the state requires, but this is where we think we are, so that it's a little more clear to the public that we could be in trouble, rather than, oh, everything's okay, because it could be a little misleading if people are following this. And I just appreciate that the importance of the sustainable water management and the problems facing us and the environmental challenges coming up in the future. So it's all very difficult to deal with this. It isn't like the past, where you could look at the past and say, here's what we can project 20 years out. It's a challenge. And that's my comments on this plan tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
Water Board directors and staff. My name's Dan Murray. I represent the Meadow Club, and I am on the board of directors, and I'll be the president of the Meadow Club in 2024. Today, I'm joined by Greg Brown, who's he's our general manager, and Chris Morrison is zooming in. I wanted to thank you so much for first, I represent, we have 1,500 members, most of which are customers of Marin Water. Over the years, we feel like we've been a very good partner in water consumption and efficiency, and we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on upgrading our systems and making sure that we're as efficient as possible. I have a couple of notes here. Over the years, we've shared with the board and staff. The Meadow Club has award-winning best practices in irrigation optimization. We have a documented history of water conservation, having exceeded every target the district has ever set for us. We want to continue to find ways to reduce water consumption and be more efficient, but to do this, we need to invest more capital. And we are constantly looking for ways to do that. We've invested in drone technology and subterranean moisture meters over the years, but all this costs money. And if there's a perverse incentive to not do that, that really hinders us from putting our resources towards becoming more efficient. So I would urge you to take make the thing we saw earlier unambiguous, and remove the 3 years and base it solely off MAWA. And additionally, on top of that, there's something in that we want to comment on the restriction on when and where when we can water in a type 3 condition. And we feel that because we've invested in, drone technology and in subterranean moisture meters, when we're in that condition like we were a couple of years ago, we actually go out and hand water, and it's the most efficient way of doing it. And our professionals know the time and place and when and where to do it. And we urge you that you give us that flexibility as long as we don't exceed our allocation. We're here for you if you have any questions, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then Mr. Ed Jamison, please.
Yes, in the EKI water plans documents table on pages 34 and 39, it should be noted that present total potable water use of 38,000 acre feet assumes non-drought year stream releases and does not include evaporation. Including drought year stream releases and evaporation would raise total use to about 45,000 acre feet annually. And table 4-9 on page 42 shows indoor per capita water use at 56 gallons daily. That's nowhere near the district's estimate in the low 30s. Correcting this may change the document's rankings of conservation opportunities. And finally, in a tip of the hat to Phil Sauter's comments on PFAS, that's something we should be concerned about until we learn a lot more about DPR. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing, and I'll ask if any of the directors have any further comments.
I'm on a roll tonight, Monty.
Roll.
I think the comment on irrigation frequency is also that's relevant. I think I can't remember the exact phrasing for the restrictions that we place on irrigation when we enter shortage levels, but if they are really incompatible with maintaining the golf courses, and as long as the golf courses are not doing something that exceeds their allocation, I think that's something we should also consider. It's just that's a lot of stress, I feel like, to put on.
It was obviously something we considered in the last drought, and of course, these plans include variance procedures where hardships occur, and that was the conversation that we had with all of the golf courses in the area, as to, meeting the demand reduction goal that we asked for, but allowing them the flexibility to water in the way that they needed to.
Great. So you're comfortable, Paul, that those variance procedures will always be considered.
Yeah.
I guess I would just ask along the same lines, what would be, if we're already adopting a limitation for golf courses, why are we setting a limit daily? I don't know enough about irrigation of golf courses. I would assume that with a limit, they're going to use that water as efficiently as possible. So I'm not sure why we're weighing in on how they should do that, given
I think it's a requirement for all of our customers in terms of number of days of irrigation. It was just a way for us to kind of prescribe that
across the board, as opposed to having a carve out for a specific use group, of which there could be other specific use groups that could come forward. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm fine then. I don't want to engender every single use case that we would have to manage for, because I think that could get unwieldy. So we have a variance process that allows for that.
Yeah.
Larry, do you have any additional comments?
Only that I think we should think about, why are we focusing on golf courses here at all? they have a financial incentive to use the least amount of water because they're paying for it. So I don't know why they got called out separately in this document. They are, a significant user, but not that big. Anyway, it's just a food for thought in the big picture of why we're focusing on them. So other than that, I think we could potentially look at something like a soil moisture guide, to talk to folks like the Meadow Club and find out where they cut it. Is it 70% or 80% or 60% or whatever the number is that is indicating stress on the plants, that because they have the instrumentation to say that, there's a goal there, don't let the moisture get below X and above Y or something like that, might be getting even more too complicated. I don't know, but food for thought.
Okay. So I think with this, we're going to pull this from a decision at this point so that we can come back with some redrafted language that's much more on point and clean and maybe
That's great, good feedback. Thank you.
okay.
I think that makes sense. I think the next board meeting we'll be able to bring it back.
Okay. All right.
And thank you to the Meadow Club for coming. We appreciate your interest in this and taking it seriously.
Okay, with that, we will be we've closed our public hearing and we will now move on to our regular agenda item number 9A, which is our strategic plan development.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think we missed, if you can clarify for us, Board Secretary, our
I'll
consent
vote on the consent.
Yes, we haven't continued finishing voting on the consent.
Did we have a motion?
There was no motion yet
Okay.
made. We
Okay.
had
Let's clean this
gone
up.
back to the director's reports
Got it.
instead of gone back to
Thank
that.
you.
So we can pick that up now if you want to.
Let's go ahead and do that. But should we wait for Jed to
Yes.
rejoin? Is he? Ranjiv. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of cleanup out of a mess I made of the agenda, which is to go back to our consent calendar and to deal with that as an item. So can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
And we have no public comments.
That is correct. There are no comments on
Okay.
this.
All right, so now we can do a vote.
And I can do a voting roll call.
Thank you.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cush,
Aye.
and Chair Schmidt.
Aye. Okay, with that now we will move on to our regular item 9A, our strategic plan development.
Good evening, Directors. Adrienne Mertens, Communications and Public Affairs Manager. I've been hoping to lead the district through our development of our next 5-year strategic plan, and we're back again tonight to work on another goal and the objectives for the strategic plan. And Alex Anaya, our engineering director, is here to cover that item. It will be on the resilient water system goal, but we also have Charles Gardner, our consultant who's helping with development of the strategic plan from the Catalyst Group, here to also help facilitate discussion. And I'll kick it over to Charles to start.
Good evening, directors. Nice to see you again. My part of the slideshow will be very familiar to you, but for the benefit of the public who may not have participated in the previous meetings, as Adrienne said, we're here to talk about one of the goals anticipated in the strategic plan, the resilient water system. So I'll give a little context on our purpose. What we are doing is working through each of the goals to refine and align them, the goals and objectives. This one today is on the resilient water system. Discussion questions for you is the goal framed correctly to guide the organization for the next 5 years? And do the objectives capture the important interests of the board, the staff, customers, and the community? You've seen this before. This is a general structure of the strategic plan. We've had discussions of vision, mission. We're in the midst of the end values, and we're in the midst of the discussion of goals and objectives. And I would also note again that performance measures are going to be an important part of the strategic plan as well. So important to think about those as we talk about the objectives this evening. This is the draft vision and mission. It's a good starting point to remind us that this is the top level of our strategic plan. And then the goals, the 5 goals that we're working our way through: reliable water supply, resilient water system, watershed stewardship, fiscal responsibility, organizational excellence. So we've covered goals 1, 3, and 4. We're talking about goal 2 tonight, and goal 5 will be coming up at the next meeting. And those are the next steps. So today, goal 2, January 9th, goal 5, then the entire draft strategic plan comes back to you at the end of January. And then that leads into the board retreat, which would be the annual work plan that would flow from the strategic plan considered at the end of January. That's the end of my piece. I'm going to hand it over to Alex for a detailed discussion.
All right, thank you very much. Alex and I, engineering director. So I'm here to kind of guide us today through this very comprehensive goal number 2 of the resilient water system. In order to accomplish this, as the statement is, the investment in maintenance in a resilient water system through an effective infrastructure management plan will be necessary to help us accomplish this goal. And we have a series of objectives we'll be going through today, which will cover how we're going to do that. So the district water system spans, challenging topography and complex terrain, consisting of all the pipelines, pump stations, tanks, reservoirs that all have to really work together to help us, store and convey our water to all or over 191,000 of our customers. Maintaining and modernizing this infrastructure is core to ensuring that the system resiliency through our day-to-day needs, and also ensuring that we're resilient through droughts, including natural and man-made disasters. The 4-year rate increase that was recently approved is in support of this and the district's ability to renew and replace system infrastructure in an adaptive management approach to identify and prioritizing projects that will be essential in guiding the system investment going forward. Instilling the latest best practices in training and emergency response and recovery methods and team procedures will also ensure the district's workforce is prepared to safeguard the community's water supply under the most challenging conditions. So over the next 5 years, we've identified 6 objectives, which we'll be covering today, which kind of build on each other. So starting off with the infrastructure condition assessment that follows and leads into the capital planning, which helps identify and prioritize the projects, and the capital project delivery, which is where we will execute these projects for construction. And then the objective number 4 is the operations and maintenance, which will involve kind of covering how we're going to maintain and operate the system going forward. And the energy planning objective number 5 will just look at looking at evaluations for energy efficiencies. And rounding everything out would be the emergency response and readiness plan, ensuring that we are able to maintain a resilient system in the event of emergency when it happens. So with that, we'll get right into the first objective of infrastructure condition assessment. So the district will enhance its infrastructure risk assessment process to systematically prioritize investments in the replacement, rehabilitation, and or repair of its infrastructure to ensure that we are delivering high quality drinking water. We will first we will also complete this assessment by completing above ground facility condition assessment, starting with the most critical assets. So, for example, our 97 pump stations to date, we have been able to complete 30 assessments. Of the 130 tanks that we have, we've been able to complete 99 of the condition assessments in that. Enhancing the ongoing prioritization and process of pipeline replacement jobs through the criteria, including assessment of the age of the pipe, looking at leak history, the probability and consequence of failures, and the type of material that the pipes are made out of. We will also be performing condition assessments of our larger infrastructure, such as our dams and treatment plants, to identify the needs of those. And we will complete the facilities master plan assessing the workplace facilities, which staff recently brought to the operations committee, and to introduce this item as an informational item. And we will look at the administration buildings, Sky Oaks, the corporation yard, and other facilities that will all be incorporated into the capital planning effort. We'll also be identifying above ground infrastructure hardening opportunities that will provide a greater level of protection against wildfire, and will also be incorporated into the capital planning effort. We will be identifying and evaluating the water system to look for and identify single points of failure that will also be used and incorporated into the capital planning prioritization effort. We will be reviewing industry standards as far as security measures across the water system to help identify opportunities for improvements that will be incorporated into the capital planning effort. And then rounding it off, we'll be completing the water system master plan, and we'll be utilizing that information to help identify opportunities to actually simplify our system and reduce the number of tanks and pump stations, as the district has recently done on a couple of our tank projects. So that rounds up the first objective. So I will open it up for feedback and comments.
Larry, you want to lead off?
It sounds great to me.
Good.
Yeah, I love it. I think it'd be good to maybe put some timeline around these items. A lot of these are already in progress. Some we've already done. So as a 5-year objective, I think that's cool, but let's see how we can hold ourselves accountable in the meantime.
Okay, thank you.
Ranjit.
Great list. Thank you.
Thank you.
No additional comments. Thank you, Alex. Very clear.
Matt.
Just to reinforce the priority for me, and that's the redundancy and then eliminating single points of failure for the system. So I very much appreciate that. And then I guess to Director Smith's point about the timelines, when we do these assessments, what would be reality in terms of actually making improvements that we need to make in the 5-year period, or is this just the assessing of these items within the first 5 years?
This all leads into the sequential use of this. So perfect.
Yeah, just a little more specifically on the timing as we get to objective 2, we'll want to ideally have that planning done in advance of the next rate setting process. So we'd want to have all the condition assessment done well in advance of that to feed into the planning. So it's as Alex works through this, it's quite a lot of work, but it's also very significant as we think about all the needs and the increase in the CIP program that we did through the rates. And we'll get to that as well on the capital delivery objective.
Any other board comments? I'm just gonna add in. I'm not a big fan of words like enhance, because they're kind of vague. So enhancing the ongoing prioritization process, is it that we need to improve it? Is it in need of improvement?
Yeah,
So,
it's a good question. And those words, how they're generated is, we don't want to say develop it, because we have a prioritization process. But what we want to do is look at making it more rigorous, more transparent to the board and the public, and really kind of strengthen the approach.
I
Or,
love all those adjectives.
Okay, better than enhance.
I just enhances to me is just vague. So maybe that's just my own pet peeve, but I like specificity, and all the things that you just said sound like things that are important to do. Enhance sounds like, we'll make it better if it's, So anyway, sorry, I'm get stuck on certain planning words. Opportunities, identify above ground infrastructure hardening opportunities. Are those needs? So I would in that case change that to needs, because if it's what we need to do, we need to identify it. Same thing in the we're reviewing standard security measures across our water system. That sounds like a really important need. So I would get rid of that opportunity. And then that last opportunity actually is good.
Okay.
Sorry, I just I think that it's not, these aren't frivolous things that we're doing. We are doing the serious work of maintaining the district, and we're not just looking for opportunities to do work. We're identifying needs and taking care of them. So
Perfect. Okay. All right. So that'll lead us into our second objective. It's that, oh. Yeah. So that leads into our capital planning. So this will be a collaborative effort with working with the capital steering committee to identify the infrastructure projects that were evaluated through the first phase of the condition assessment process, to establish associated timelines to implement the projects based on the project capital budget. So we will accomplish this by incorporating the data from the first objective of the infrastructure condition assessment that will lead the district-wide effort to develop the really robust capital planning investment scenarios for the next 10 and 30 years. We'll be working with the grant and finance teams to identify grant funding opportunities, which will help offset the cost by the ratepayers. And we'll also be evaluating bond funding opportunities for the large capital projects that really provide a generational value to our customers. And those are the 3 bullets I have for this. I will open it up for comment and discussion.
The first bullet, if I could just add, Alex, is getting at that we found through this last capital CIP development process, working with the board collectively, I think that it'd be nice to look at a long-term horizon. And so typically you do 5-10-year plans, but here we've identified the 30-year horizon to really kind of see what it's going to take to bend the curves and how some of these look. In the facility, in the condition assessment section, we have quite a lot of kind of areas that we haven't dug into in some time, dams and trying to project lives of the dams, that sort of stuff. And that's likely going to be, a long term, but that will fit well within the 30-year projection of our capital plan, understanding when you're at 30 years, you stay at a pretty high level. But I think it'll be a interesting exercise. I'm really looking forward to that one.
I'll start off to the right.
Right. With the first bullet point, the 10 and 30 horizon, I feel like we're locking into those 2 horizons after we evaluate all the projects. And I'm sure, as most would know, that a lot can get done within the first few years too. So we're not only looking at a 10 and 30-year horizon. So some sort of just future planning as opposed to just those 2 dates would help with me with that one. And then the last one, evaluate bond funding opportunities for larger capital projects. I just want to make caution that we're going to be using the word bonding because we're going to have a limited capacity, and we have a lot of big projects, water supply in particular, coming our way. And I hate to jeopardize any bonding capacity that we may have that we really have to use for water supply to be using for something that we could slip into a CIP budget as part of the planning process. So that's my caution on that.
Ranjiv?
Alex, what is the capital steering committee?
Oh, that's a great question, Director Kush. So Capital Steering Committee comprises of the directors from all the departments: engineering, operations, watershed, water resources, and the finance, where we meet once a month and look at and talk about the projects that come up throughout the course of the month, and we evaluate and determine where the best timeline to address those projects fits, and also for identify future budgeting needs for those projects.
And specifically to add to it, we bring to the board the CIP. Inherent in a capital budget, projects get delayed. You find needs that weren't identified. So it's to talk about the new priorities, or this project's going to be delayed 2 years for this reason. What can be swapped in and ensure it's meeting the priorities of the clients of engineering.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, nothing else.
Jed? Larry?
Yes, I think that one thing we need to add to this list is improving water quality. This doesn't address at all changes coming in the water standards, nor does it address things like using ozone to improve consumer acceptance of the water by eliminating taste and odor. I think we need another bullet that says something to the effect of improving water quality should be one of the goals here for capital expenditure.
Okay. You want to respond to that, or you don't have to, just taking comments?
I'll briefly, it's actually a good point. And what came to my mind when you said that, Director Russell, was there's a number of planning efforts that are beyond the condition assessment that would feed into the capital planning. And I think maybe the best way to do it is reflect that we're incorporating all the condition assessment as well as other master planning effort, whether it's from the watershed or water quality or other areas of the organization. So I think it's a good point, because we haven't recognized that there's other elements in the organization that will likely feed into the capital planning effort.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well put.
Larry's comment reminded me that we discussed compliance requirements with the new upcoming EPA lead and copper rule. Are the sense is that we may not have much to do in response to that, but I'm not sure if that's something that should be flagged as part of capital investment.
I don't think necessarily, but I do think maybe even within the other planning efforts, capturing emerging regulations, that kind of thing, and regulations and emerging regulations, that sort of stuff. So we really recognize a broad sweep that goes into capital planning. Specifically on lead and copper, I think at an upcoming board meeting, we need to just bring an update and some details on why we're concluding that we don't feel that, and what we have found in the initial phase of the lead and copper rule. I think that would be a nice presentation.
I'll just add to these good comments, and going back to the first bullet point, which was a major driver for our rate increase, was recognition that we had a substantial backlog in maintenance needs, and that the goal was to bend the curve, as Ben, you just used that term, which is correct. It's going to take a while for us to get there, but I'd like to think that in the next 5 years, that the curve will, when we map it out over the next 5 years, the curve will have begun to bend. And so I'm wondering to what extent we could whether we could actually say in here that we will reduce our, and I don't want to use I want to use the correct terms, but I don't want to say if it's backlog of maintenance or our estimated maintenance need based on our infrastructure conditions assessment, whatever it is. But I think that in 5 years, that is a fairly simple metric by which we and the public can look at and say, we said we were going to address that problem, and are we making headway on it? And I know that it's a little complicated because projects cost different things and they take time, and not every project's going to get built in the next 5 years. But again, I'm trying to think of ways in which the public can pretty easily track the kind of progress that we're trying to make.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Let us take a look at it. In my mind, I was trying to recall, because we did talk about those curves as part of this budget, and not all of them are bending. Some of them were slowing the rate of increase, and some were leveling off, and maybe some were bending. So, but let us take a look at the best way to capture that.
Okay. All right. So that'll take us into our third objective, which is the capital project delivery, in which the district will incorporate innovative processes and staffing solutions into its execution of future infrastructure projects to make efficient use of staff time, reduce costs, streamline implementation, and increase the increased capital project workload. So we will start by looking at or conducting a resource analysis to help identify staff workloads and establish future resource needs, including leveraging district staff with support from external engineering consultant firms, which will help continue driving the capital program forward. We'll be establishing on-call contracts to provide expedited repairs on projects which are too large for district crews to handle, but are too small for the standard design, bid, build workflows, which will help free up staff resources to continue working on the capital projects and design and operations and maintenance to address tasks. We'll also be executing on-call contracts with engineering firms to streamline consulting work without having to execute multiple contracts for the same type of work. For instance, on geotech work, which is a pretty common service that we're always obtaining for our projects, having one on-call so we could go to all the time makes that process a lot smoother. We'll also be reviewing and updating necessary sections of the district's contract specifications to the most current industry standards, just to ensure things like tank coatings are up to current standards for materials when we do our projects. We'll also be exploring the opportunity to apply innovative approaches to project implementation, including design build options for our large capital projects. And we will continue working with local municipalities to strive for more cost-effective solutions on paving restoration requirements to help kind of cut on cost.
Design build, we really haven't talked much to the board about that. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept, but essentially the traditional design bid build approach, design build is a different concept where you're working with a consultant / contractor that takes responsibility. You never go to 100% design. You go to like a 30% design, and you're somewhat adaptively managing it as a project is getting built. So it can be more cost effective. And it's something we do want to try here. We've never done, to my knowledge, a design build. So there's legal issues you have to think about, and other things. We'd work closely with Molly and others. And we talked to the board about the right project, and, you know, we'd have those discussions. But it is an interesting opportunity for efficiencies for the right project.
Okay. Board comments, Larry?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea about the design build. I think you have to be very careful with it, because the issue with design build, from my experience, is that you have to be very careful that the district is the one responsible for the risk. If the contractor has to take on the risk of unknowns, then the price is going to be adjusted substantially upward to compensate for those unknown risks. If you remove that risk element out of the equation, then, which I believe it's proper to do, let the district take the risk, because we're the ones who gain the benefit. then I think you can manage design build quite effectively. I'm not sure we have anything that's got quite the kind of time push that comes behind design build usually. I mean, a good example would it be the pipeline across the Richmond Bridge. That's a project that could have very easily been done in design build, and maybe should have been done in design build. So we have to be, you know, it's a tool. Just have to be careful where it fits.
Jed?
Yeah, Alex, I think it'd be helpful if you can be thoughtful about how you'll prioritize these different projects. You know, if we're going to replace a tank or a set of pipes or any part of our infrastructure or capital project needs, what lenses do you look at to spend $1 million here versus $1 million somewhere else? And for me, I you know, the top lens is single points of failure, risk, impact on numbers of customers, you know, cost, ability to complete, things like that.
Yeah.
So having a real prioritization engine behind our project decision making would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Director Smith. And part of that will be identified in the first objective in the condition assessment to evaluate all those important criteria that you just touched on, which will be used.
Chief?
I'm good. Thanks again, Alex.
Matt?
Just one recommendation that's under bullet point number, or the first bullet point about establishing future resource needs. And I'd encourage to take a look at maybe not resource needs, but staffing needs. And the reason I say that is we have so much stuff coming down the pipeline here. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on this one, but if additional staff internally will help those processes be more efficient, and that's something that the team comes up with as recommendations, especially with the ability to staff up with our current rates, I'd like to see you guys consider it, just because there's so much coming on, if that would help.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go last with some special pet words. In the project description, we talked about to make efficient use of staff time. I think can we say like maximizing efficient use of staff time? The district will incorporate innovative processes and staffing solutions into its execution of future infrastructure projects to make efficient use of staff time. I think we're always maximizing the efficient use of our staff time, and it seems like we're not yet, and I think we probably are.
Okay.
So just a suggestion on Word. And then the last bullet point here, you know, this paving issue, I hope we're not continuing at 5 years to work with local municipalities to strive for a more efficient solution here. I'm hoping that we will have achieved it in 5 years. And so I'm going to encourage us to be ambitious and go for the best solution that we can within that time frame, because that is certainly having an impact on our costs.
I'll second that.
It sure does. Yes.
So instead of to strive for, maybe to achieve a more, yeah, I like that.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that takes us to our operations and maintenance objective, in which the district will evaluate its operations and maintenance program to help ensure that staff has the knowledge and skill sets to efficiently operate and maintain our system. We'll start on by addressing these by recognizing that there has been a significant staff turnover in operations. We will develop and focus on training plans for the operations staff to help ensure that they have the knowledge and the training to operate and maintain our system. We'll be establishing the standard operating procedures to support training and provide for transfer of institutional knowledge to the newer district staff. We'll encourage staff involvement in industry associations to provide for learning opportunities from others in the water industry, which will help kind of trade ideas as to what other agencies are doing with respect to the work that they're doing. We'll review the organizational structure of operations, including the classifications, to ensure that the most efficient utilization of district resources are being applied. We'll be identifying opportunities to implement technological advancements and equipment to improve efficiencies, which is similar to what district staff just presented this past Friday with the a new valve replacement tool that they had, which is seeming to be paying off dividends and good return on investment. So those are the bullets under this objective. So I will open it up for comments and discussion.
I definitely appreciate the approach to kind of almost looks like getting the train back on the track on this one and getting forward. The operation and maintenance title throws me off because operation and maintenance, then I dive into, basically learning how to maintain the system again. It seems like we're further on down the road than that. I would look at a little bit different title just so it's a little bit more clear, but I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Thank you.
Alex, the valve replacement presentation that we heard on last Friday was again, super interesting. And I'm wondering if we have programs in place that incentivize staff members to identify innovations or efficiency measures. And if not, if that's something that we could consider just to, promote staff looking at ways to achieve similar types of gains.
I think that's something we could definitely look at as part of this objective. Yeah. Thank you.
Jed? It seems like this is mostly personnel and staff focused, I mean, to a large extent. And I guess in that regard, I'd love us to have some holistic view on staff happiness, on what's going on in their lives, how we can make them as productive as possible, get their feedback and input. And so I think that, this is more than just about hiring some folks and training. This is really about getting the best out of our team.
That's a good comment and a critical issue, very important going forward for us. You're going to see quite a bit of that in the outstanding organization fifth goal. So that's where kind of the district-wide, we recognize in developing it that we have some overlap with this one and that one, but in part because we've had so much turnover in operations, we wanted to zero in on it here.
Larry?
Yeah, I have several comments. It's interesting. I'm afraid, Matt, O&M is the words that are used for this task. I think that's kind of operation maintenance is kind of a standard of the industry. But I think we have to focus on bullet 3. We have an opportunity here with the AWWA annual conference in Anaheim in June to award performance by sending operations folks to the AWWA. There's a substantial industry presence in the AWWA at this meeting, maybe 2 football fields of equipment. I think that would be a good incentive. But I also think, and I'm not sure what the deadlines are on applying, that we should think about sending a crew to at least compete in one of the physical challenges, the operator challenges. They are things like doing hot taps and stuff like that. You actually install them and people are timed. It's a rough and tumble environment because there are much, much larger water districts than us that make a business out of this. But I think that perhaps our lean and mean approach might fit in well with a competitive spirit if the folks are interested in it, the operations folks.
I think we're doing that, right?
Yeah, so on that, Director Russell, Darren in his new role has reinvigorated our operations challenge team. And so there is a team that's formed and they have a schedule of practice and they expect to compete in the regionals, which, then you go to the
Yeah.
But yeah, it absolutely is a great opportunity to expose kind of O&M line staff to the broader industry and get folks involved and feel it and learn and just have the competitive spirit as well.
Especially when the mountain comes to Muhammad.
Right.
Well, let me know when it happens. I'd love to go cheer them on.
June, middle of June, early June.
Indeed. So I think Jed made a good point, which is noting that a lot of the bullets in here are about staff. And I think, you know, and I agree with them. I think that these are investing in the staff to be able to carry out O&M is very staff heavy operations. So really, really important to make sure that we have the right staff, that they're trained to do the work, and that we're always thinking about succession. So love all the bullet points. I do think though that because this is operations and maintenance, I think we need to have a bullet in there that is something that simply says we're going to operate the system to deliver high quality water to our customers reliably. Just seems, I don't know if that's, yeah, it's an outcome. I mean, it is what we should be doing. And same thing with maintenance in terms of just we'll maintain the system, you know, so it reliably delivers water, something along those lines with given those are central goals of our district. So it just seemed like it belongs there, probably elsewhere where too.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. That gets us into our fifth objective with energy planning, in which the district will be seeking opportunities to reduce its carbon footprint and energy costs through infrastructure projects in the planning. We'll start by the evaluation of pump stations that we are going to be doing for rehabilitation, and determine the feasibility of supplementing the prime PG&E power with alternative energy, and comparing that to what the system efficiency upgrades would do, and determine what the life cycle cost savings would be between those options. We'll be also participating in regulatory meetings regarding the fleet vehicle changes and evaluating the expansion of the district's fleet to EVs, and identifying the need for charging stations going forward. And we'll continue to participate in the Marine Clean Energy Renewable Energy Program, which sources its energy from renewable sources like solar, wind, and geothermal, amongst others. And we will review and evaluate the application of microturbine technology where applicable as an energy recovery and cost-saving option when we do our pipeline projects. And we'll also evaluate renewable power opportunities throughout the district facilities. That kind of rounds up this objective. So I'll open it up for comments and feedback.
Jed, let's start with you.
I don't know. I think the continued participation in may not be the right objective, but you know, maybe you can maximize that opportunity to work with our partner, Marine Clean Energy, and or review other options to make us as best and efficient as possible.
Thank you.
Larry?
I suggest, Alex, that maybe you've already done this, but you take a good hard look at the spotted owls in those microturbines. There may be a little difficulty there in the planning or implementation of those devices in the spotted owl territory. I don't know if that's the case or not. I do recall the owl that committed suicide and took out the two legs of power going to San Geronimo. So I know that it can happen with our Raptors. Everything else looks good. I think these are good goals.
All right, thank you.
Matt?
I like the list. Just one question would be, is there an opportunity to look at conversion of power tools, gas or diesel powered tools to electric or battery powered tools in here too, or that not kind of bubble up to the level we're looking at?
I think that'd be something we could definitely look into.
Okay.
Ranjiv?
Alex, honestly, I was hoping for a lot more on this one. We know that the water sector is by far the largest consumer of energy in the state of California. A lot of the bigger agencies, retailers and wholesalers, I don't know a lot, but a few, East Bay Mud, Metropolitan Water District, are committing to carbon neutrality at certain timeframes. And honestly, I'd like to see us doing the same. you know, making, rather than kind of dancing around opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint and energy costs, which I'm not really sure puts any pressure on us to actually achieve goals. I would actually like to see us set a goal for achieving carbon neutrality, like so many other water districts are either doing now or will be doing. I don't want to be left behind on this issue, not in Marin. My other concern is that some of our decision-making around using alternative energies might be based on things like current economics and life cycle cost savings. I'm not sure that's always the best economic metric to use. There may be times when we would consider alternative energy sources now, even though they don't pencil out economically as well as maybe what we're currently doing, but over the long term could be, both reducing some of the externalities of what we're currently doing now and potentially be more economically beneficial as the economics of energy production changes. So yeah, I'm really not happy with the lack of ambition around energy planning.
Just some clarification, if I could. I think I understand the interest, of course, in carbon neutrality. I'm just thinking, and I don't know, we can go back and think about it, but if you have thoughts on, sometimes when you put something like that in a strategic plan, you start driving initiatives without the cost factor as much. So I think, absent further clarification, we can give it some thought and come back with some thoughts of wrapping that into it.
So maybe Ben, I mean, I understand, and I know that for all of us, in our personal lives, I continue to avoid making tough choices with respect to energy more expensive, and I will continue to do that. We will do that here. So but at some point that's no longer tenable, right? And maybe as a first step, we can understand what exactly has East Bay Mud established, so they have committed to carbon neutrality, and how are they managing the economic challenges of making that kind of commitment? That might be something to learn from.
Yeah, I'll look into that. It could be a policy goal irrespective of the financial impact, just that climate change is bigger than, but I do understand your point, and it's a good one. I mean, for example, we pay Deep Green Energy. That obviously is not the most cost effective, but prior boards have made policy decisions to invest in the more expensive energy in the broader picture. So I do understand and appreciate, and we'll give that some thought.
I mean, I think as part of a strategic plan, you can say that we will come up with a position on carbon neutrality within this time period. So it's a 5-year time period. Let's come up with what our position is, and we'll present it and approve it.
Yeah,
and I think that'll help us make sure it's on the objective list. It is researched, and we can come up with our answer. I'm not at this point ready to say whether to know when we're going to be able to have carbon neutrality approved here. I haven't seen any real evidence of how much it'll cost and how long it'll take to get there, but let's come up with a plan.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I think that that there is in this space of water and energy, there is such an incredible nexus of opportunity and a lot of technology that's changing that relationship in really important ways to reduce energy consumption in the delivery of water. So I'd like to see us, over the next 5 years, make some, obviously I continue to identify best management practices and emerging technologies that we could harness. I think that it would be good for us to at the end of 5 years or less, to come up with an assessment of what it would take for us to become carbon neutral. And at that point, we can look at what the technologies are, what the costs would be, and we can make decisions about investments informed by that. I know we're not ready to do that right now, but I think that that's the kind of progress that we should be making for sure in the next 5 years.
Actually,
I understand that. Sorry, Larry, I understand the complexity around this. If it takes us 5 years to come up with a plan for achieving carbon neutrality, honestly, I think that would be kind of disappointing.
well, to that end, I think your comments are interesting, Ranjiv. I think you might be shocked at how far along we are already. My guess is we're well ahead of East Bay Mud already, because the biggest single cost and the thing that's not going to change, why water companies are heavy power users, is lifting water, which weighs 8 pounds per gallon. It's pumping. And those are where the costs really add up. So the fact we're using dark green MCE means that our biggest power consumption is already carbon neutral. So I think, Ben, it's an interesting discussion. I think we should figure out where we are today. My
Yeah,
guess
I
is
was-
we're 75% or something like that already.
I was thinking similar, particularly the next biggest place where we have the carbon footprint is our fleet. And now we're under, right, the state mandate is all organizations our size to look into electric conversion. And there's a lot of work there. So I don't think, I mean, there's some issues around heavy equipment but I don't think we're that far away. I don't think it would take 5 years if we put it here, right? On the heels of this exercise is going to be the annual work plan. And I would expect a board member or members to say, we should be doing this year one, so we know in the subsequent years where to go with it and how far we can get there. So I do think it is doable. It'll take a little bit of work to understand what that'll be. So I do like the idea, and it won't be 5 years to get there at all.
Monty, can I just follow up real quick? I think we have an opportunity here because, 5 years is a long time. And it's good to hear that we're really far along the way. But the other thing is we have got a lot of big projects coming in front of us. And so this might be an opportunity to identify the evaluation of the carbon impact by project as part of the strategic plan. So every time something comes up, it's a mandatory requirement or part of the process. I think that would probably help us, at least as we're developing a 5-year plan.
I agree with that. It's a great point.
Okay, thank you. So that'll take us to our emergency response and readiness plan. So the district will be planning and preparing for emergencies to ensure that it's able to maintain critical operations through fire, flood, earthquakes, and other catastrophic events, and efficiently manage the disaster recovery process. And we'll start that by updating the district's emergency response plans to reflect current needs, priorities, and threats to ensure that the staff is ready to respond to emergencies. We'll be conducting yearly reviews of the district's dam emergency action plans, or EAPs, for each of the 7 dams that we have, and coordinate a tabletop exercise with Marin County Office of Emergency Services and other stakeholders every 5 years to ensure the district and local first responders are familiar with the response plan in event of an emergency at one of our dams. We'll also be participating in emergency preparedness trainings with Marin County OES and countywide emergency response scenarios such as fire, flood, or PSPS events. And then to round it off, we'll be establishing FEMA compliant contracts for engineering and construction services that will be ready to be executed following any emergency. So that way we can maximize the potential for reimbursement. So those are the bullet points that we have for emergency response. I'll open it up for comment and response.
Fantastic. Larry, do you want to take it away? Okay, we'll keep moving. Matt?
I appreciate the coordination with the, I guess it's the fire department now, and the county now oversees or DM or whatever alphabet name they've changed for the day. But the other part I'd like to see added in here is the EOC and how we can incorporate that into this plan, make sure that's kept up to standard and then exercised as part of those joint exercises. It'd be great to have some of those exercises here, not just at their office too.
Thank you.
Ranjiv?
Alex, We don't have anything here with respect to coordinating with other agencies to manage countywide emergencies, whether it's fire or flood. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place. You know, we may be focused here specifically on emergencies that affect our operations, but I'm just wondering if there is a place where we emphasize our interest in working with our other, sister agencies to address county level emergencies. Marin, the Wildlife Protection Authority, the flood control districts, et cetera.
So a lot of those agencies do kind of work together in the Marin OES Center to address various emergencies that occur. So I think there's some coordination that happens at the county level to kind of get everyone together in the same room to, go over and discuss what that scenario may be, whether it's a flood emergency or a wildfire. So how we would all work together in that, setting would just be depending on what the scenario is driven by OES.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to flag that that's something that we're also, we're obviously already committed to it, that we're going to remain committed to this. It's, it does come up, I think, a lot around now fire risk mitigation. We don't talk about it much with respect to flood control because I think our opportunities there are much more limited in our ability to impact flooding in the Ross Valley. But there may be areas in the future where that becomes more important. So
it's
the third bullet there, we could Marin County Office of Emergency Service and other first responders on countywide that reflects it's broader. There's a whole number of active participants and others that we work with.
Larry, were you able to? Nope. Okay. I think my only comment would be, that whether we need to add in here that we're going to continue to assess risk, that our risks, I know we have already a lot of what has come forward is identifying the risks of our facilities to these kinds of disasters. So it might just be worth considering whether there's a bullet in here that will continue to assess and meet risks and reduce our risks. And that's it. Okay.
I just had one more brief comment, if I could, President Schmidt. I just wanted to note that, so far I thought this strategic planning has been going very well. And I just wanted to recognize someone that's really been holding it together and been instrumental, and that's Adrian. You guys don't see it because she just introduces it briefly, but behind the scenes, just such a tremendous amount of work and support to kind of keep this thing together, the logistics, the content review, the wording review, consistency among the different goals that are written by different people. So it's been great. Thank you.
I mean, that's worth saying, take a moment to say thank you and thank you for acknowledging staff and Alex, and I know behind the two of you and others, there are more people who have helped pull this information together. And it's really, as much as we ask a lot of questions, we make a lot of suggestions and recommendations, we should start out by saying thank you. There's clearly a lot of really great thinking that has gone into this, and it shows, and really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other board comments, then we'll see if there are any public comments.
Yes, there are a couple. I have Larry Minikis and Phil Sauter.
Well, there's a lot to cover, and I'm just going to focus on energy planning. And I did a little research in real time on East Bay Mud, and they have 11 solar projects going on, and that has reduced their energy consumption by 2%. But they've got a big one in Orinda coming on next year, which will reduce their energy consumption by 10%. And they're also have a partnership with a company called InPipe Energy, and they're implementing an conduit hydroelectric system that will generate about 130,000 kilowatts of energy per year, which is interesting. They're doing fleet conversions, which would be expected, and they're exploring large battery units to store some of this energy. So I just thought I'd mention that. And to Jed's earlier comments, I was talking to his mom a little earlier, just chatting and saying, I've been coming to these meetings for 30 years. And she goes, you've seen a lot. And to that, what I want to say is I have seen a lot. And this is probably the most introspective year that I've witnessed. I think the drought got this going, but having 3 new board members here, and Monty, you've only been here, this is your 3rd year. I think what this has done is propel the district to really look at itself deeply. And that's what's been really exciting. And I just want to make one comment at the end, is that I want to acknowledge that the proactive and strategic approach that staff and the board is taking to safeguard our water system's future integrity and resilience, and just appreciate all the work that's been going on here and all the involvement that the board is showing and staff is showing. Thank you so much.
After Mr. Phil Sauter is Marilyn Price.
Thanks for the presentation. There were a couple of things that I had sort of expected to show up here, and it could be coming at a later time. But the first one is the SCADA system, System Control and Data Acquisition. We had a chance to look at that about 10 years ago when we were fighting that big tank project down at White Hill. And we sat there for an hour or so in the control room and watched these huge plasma displays back when they cost a ton of money. And it shows every tank, every pump, and every valve that the district owns, all reporting back to the system and all under control of the system. It was really quite amazing. At that time, the operators had a goal of keeping all the tanks at 70% level. They wanted to keep it there every hour of every day, which meant that the pumps were working constantly. And we'd asked the consultant on that project what would happen if we let the levels go up and down, even, from 50% to 90%, even though it was a little scary. What they said is that significantly reduced the need for treated water storage. You could get by with less storage. And we'd asked to take a look at the original RFPs that went out for the SCADA project, and we found that those were some benefits that were listed in there as possible benefits from putting in a system like that, and including a reduction of energy costs. So you could kind of fill the tanks when it was cheap to do so. So that's something that I would think would be in there, but maybe it's going to come up later. And the second thing is, I've certainly seen the moving numbers over the last couple of years in the shift between potable water usage and non-potable water usage. It used to be, I think, non-potable was about 40% of our usage, and now I think it might go up to 60%. And since this is a 5-year plan that references 10 and 30 years out, I would sure expect to see that considered and some thought being given to what we want to do in changing our system to better match supply with demand. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Marilyn Price, please.
Well, yeah, just a quick comment. And sorry, I had joined late. I want to echo Larry's comment on what this board is doing. I'm very impressed with your attention to detail and your concern. And I was just pleased in the part that I heard that you brought up the part about trying to be carbon neutral. I think that is the way to go. Everything that I am involved with, it's like, think globally, act locally, and globally it doesn't look so good. So it's up to us, the locals, the cities, to do everything that we can to help with this global warming and our climate situation. So, things like, solar panels and on your buildings, the vehicles you use, and certainly that you're deep green. So, and I'm just really appreciate that you're going to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Okay, with that, we are moving on to our next agenda item, which is future board and committee meetings updates.
Yes, so beginning next year, January 9th, we'll have our first board of directors meeting. And a key item will be the organization of the board of directors, but also, again, a further strategic plan development on our organizational excellence. Also, we'll have on Friday, January 12th, 9:30 is our operations committee meeting. Key item is water supply and resiliency roadmap update. Tuesday, January 23rd, Board of Directors will have a Board of Directors meeting. That will be the committee appointments. External meetings will have Friday, January 5th is the North Bay Watershed Association meeting. And then on Wednesday, January 10th is the Tamales Bay Foundation meeting. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. With that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, folks.
Thank you. Take care.